Anyway, everybody, welcome to the Daily Closing. This is episode number 23. Great to see everybody. There's a lot going on out there right now.
Okay.
What an incredible timing for this conversation this Friday. A lot coming down the pipeline. As a matter of fact, we're going to stick to only a few things. Obviously, there is no bigger topic about anything that we need to cover today, bigger than what just took place with former President Donald Trump. He's being indicted.
Again?
And they unseal, he's being indicted again. And I don't know if this will be even the last time that that's going to happen, unfortunately.
No, they're going at
Yeah. And then we have, we were able to, before we getting on here, to see the unseal indictment. There's 37 counts, part of it. And in addition to the 37 counts, there's also a charge of conspiracy, because one of the attorney's right-hand people, who was essentially his right-hand person, apparently, well, for a conspiracy, all it takes is more than one person to be involved with something.
And it becomes a conspiracy.
But that's a serious charge. It's one of the
Yeah.
go-to for the feds. It's one of the go-to for the whole. I mean, we'll go through the conversation, but I just want to let you know that usually, if you're looking for something to stick against the wall, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That usually works. But and then a couple other things to cover. We are looking at very sad development about the political stage of the country. Democratic Maryland City Council, Kristen Mink, who was recently criticized for claiming that Muslim children speaking out at the school board meetings were on the same side as white supremacists. And I'm trying to understand, by the way, this is not a question of, and in addition to that, suggesting that white women and Zionist Jews should not be allowed to become part of any specific government roles because of the white supremacists that they still has the ability to impose, project, and it's part of this racism that apparently, according to her, is the only way to end it. So I don't know that we intend to, right?
That makes total sense.
Right. We're gonna talk about some of the Chinese citizens are also doing in terms of suing the state of Florida over property buying ban. You know what I mean? Ron DeSantis was not playing around when he said we are going to restrict or stop altogether. And I think that is dealing more with foreign nationals, you know what I mean? But it's going to create a very interesting scenario, but that is definitely a reality taking place. And some citizens are already suing the state of Florida for that. We'll go into that for a second. Got some news about GM, General Motors. A company has been around for,
14 years?
114, maybe a little longer than that, I think.
1908.
So
It was funded in 1908.
yeah, so definitely definitely a significant amount of years, and then some development that's going on with them, with the placing investments, and a very quiet deal that took place that almost nobody's talking about, that I definitely want to highlight it, because it also goes against the narrative of the current administration for a number of reasons. Vivek.
Yeah, Vivek.
Vivek
My boy!
Ramaswamy posted what he calls a list of his truth, and I would definitely want to share that with the audience, see how everybody feels about it. But guys, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
How are you?
Yes, I'm doing good.
Surviving this difficult weather in the state of Florida. We have a very, very difficult
We
weather.
doing
It's
okay.
raining while it's sunny.
We doing okay.
No.
But it's nice.
There's no storm
Super
clouds
sunny.
from
No.
fires going on from
I was
Canada,
gonna
which is
say.
Florida,
we okay.
We got to make tough choices in the state of Florida. You know, it's like 90 right now. You know what I mean? Sunny. You know what I mean? You got to decide if you want to go to the park. Do you want to drive to any of the beaches around the area? Do you know what I mean? Like, what? Tough choices.
They're only
but
like 30 minutes out, by the way.
somebody's got to do it, you know. And you get to do that while you're paying less taxes.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
And you have choices. You
that-
can go the route with tolls or without tolls.
That's
Right.
funny.
So it's like you can quite literally pay Zero tax.
I'm just deeply grateful to be here right now. I can
Yes,
tell you.
yes, 100%.
Guys, I want to give you the opportunity. Well, let me go back into the whole situation with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing right now is something unprecedented. What we're seeing right now is something that is so one-sided that I don't care what political party you represent, and I don't care what political affiliation in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that any normal person can look at this whole situation right now and not come to the conclusion of saying, okay, this is really now getting out of hand. This is to the point where there is no way to justify the systematic, if you wanted to replace the systematic racism that this young lady wants us to, the systematic attack against a former president that obviously is a threat. In general, an individual who appears to be a threat to the establishment. And I don't care where you're sitting, like seriously, you know what I mean? It just, regardless of your position, to see what's taking place right now and not to come to the conclusion that this is a real problem and this is not something that should be happening here. I don't know how anybody can judge. And I know that some people really hate this man. Like I know some people, when they say anything and anyone, but it goes beyond that. I'm choosing anybody. I'm okay with you just going to the extent of voting for somebody else. You know what I mean? But when it gets to the point of saying anybody other than this man, because I hate him so much that I don't care if a building collapses on top of it, that's a different type of hate. You know what I mean? When you truly want to hurt somebody. I'll give you what can potentially be the end result if everything went wrong, if every single one of the counts will actually stick, how many years he would potentially be facing. It's just unbelievable. Like I said, unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this. Not even during the whole situation with also former President Nixon. This looks like something that simply was not supposed to be happening. But I want to give you the opportunity to, give your take. What do you know about the whole situation at this moment? What do you tell people? Here we are. I mean, and I want to just take this second to remind everybody what the purpose of us setting up what we are doing right now is. We're not a professional commentator from any specific place. Not one of us work for a formal news station. Nobody here is a journalist.
I don't even like cameras.
Nobody, you know what I mean? Nobody here is, there's no political. We are here essentially having a conversation from the perspective of the average person out there who's trying to process what the hell is going on out there with the economy, politically,
Yes.
and where are we heading as a nation. A lot of the principles and values that have been extremely important to the country, how these things can potentially get affected. Obviously, elections coming around. What is the impact to the average person? So that if you're coming to us, you know that we're doing it with the same level of concern that you have. And in many cases, trying to address the same questions that you would potentially have. So I'm inviting these two individuals every step of the conversation because the three of us represent truly different perspectives. We might agree on a number of things because we pay a lot of attention to money, and when you're paying a lot of attention to money, it's inevitable to come to certain conclusions because numbers are numbers. You know what I mean? That's not an opinion. That becomes as factual as possible. But with that being said, guys, I just wanted to lay that out there for everybody to remember that we're not here. I'm not here trying to be popular. I'm not trying here to sell you a training course of anything. I'm here to see if we can share a perspective that hopefully will be helpful to you and your family. You know what I mean? Especially navigating some of the issues that we have right now. So.
If I can add to what you just said, when it comes to that, also one of the things that I get constantly reminded of is where I'm from and how people, like literally, anytime I'm having just a coffee or a beer or a cigar or whatever, we're having conversations with people and we're talking about what happened in my country what happened in my country this, and literally I have people telling me, you need to speak out, you need to tell your story and the story of your country. because these are things that when you don't see, what is it? The fish is the only guy that doesn't know he's surrounded by water.
Fishbowl effect, yeah.
And so what happens with that is if you don't know what it could look like, then you get caught blindsided. And the fact that we have the perspective from two separate countries where we have seen certain things happen, all we want is, my purpose is to make sure that we share the knowledge of what I have seen and how it worked out and what it looks like right now. So that's also the perspective that I bring to the table, is life experience.
Nice. And for me, I'm black and American. no, but
What?
We're fulfilling the DEI quota as well. Yeah.
Yes.
You're black.
And it's brand new information.
But seriously, it's a completely I don't want to say different. It's a unique perspective to not only be a different. Come from a different background.
You see, I don't speak enough English to know the difference between different and unique. I thought it was the same thing.
No. So one, not only am I black, but I was raised by immigrants, so that's a whole different perspective even on top of that. So like to be someone where your parents are from America and your parents are from America versus your parents come from somewhere else, it's a whole different thought process, training, as far as
bringing,
correct.
Hit for
so it's different.
Real beatings.
So, but I think it's good, to have the different perspectives, all useful, so I'm liking what we're doing so far.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So with that being said, guys, when we're talking about something that is extremely unusual, I mean, these are very unusual times. And for me, there's also a different angle. It's not just a question of being an immigrant or that have witnessed amazing countries, amazing economies absolutely collapse. I'm one of those guys that actually really, truly loves history. To me, reading history is like essentially watching a movie. It's just I can visualize it. I can see images. I can see pictures. And throughout history, you see amazing things, and you see amazing mistakes. That and some things appear to be extremely obvious. And you go, but how did that happen, right? But the lesson is what you, at some point, have to find a way to extract. And the lesson is, if at some point you allow enough corruption to enter every aspect and every arena, whether it's politics, finances, religion, your personal life, you name it, eventually all of that will collapse and will get corrupted.
Correct.
If you're not, there's something that I read once that literally said, if you are unable to remove yourself from a corrupting environment, it's going to end up corrupting you, right? And so what I'm witnessing here right now and what I'm concerned about is that for me, this is in that territory, right? Very high levels of corruption. By the way, full disclaimer here, as much as from a financial perspective, we've been maybe somehow coming across as friendly to former President Donald Trump. And again, from a financial perspective, because it would be impossible for anybody to argue that we are having a better time right now, nationally and internationally, than what was taking place during the time that Donald Trump is president, right? And so that doesn't mean that we are blind to the reality that as an individual, there's many flaws that he brought into the table, no different than the many flaws that we bring to the table into anything, conversations, relationships, and all of that. But at the end of the day, the difference between us and somebody like Donald Trump is that he decided to run for president. And when you decide to run for public office at that level, though, especially at that, any public office, but especially at that level, you got to know that you run the risk of, obviously, in one end you have the benefit of building phenomenal relationships, but on the other side, you're really running the risk of coming out of it or navigating an incredible amount of enemies, right? And I've seen every single president from the time that I actually started to pay attention to politics develop their own set of enemies, you know what I mean? And how they navigated and how far everybody went. Here's the one thing that I want to tell you, though. I always saw everybody getting to a point almost as if they wanted to go after you, but at some point they said, we're going to stop right here. Because if we don't stop right here, then when it's your turn, you're going to come after our guy, and we hope that you're also going to stop at a certain point, because if you don't stop, the damage, the collateral damage to the country, to the average person, is just becomes overwhelming. Right. And what it feels like is that at this point, we already went past way many instances where somebody should have the common sense to say, guys, we need to stop. Because at some point, if you're talking about retaliation, if you're talking about somebody that, when the tables turn, how do we want our guy to be treated? And it almost looks like all of that is off the table at this moment. This is not a good moment for the country. I read the whole situation. I definitely want you to take a minute to talk about that experience. You coming in from a place that at some point was considered the fourth largest economy in the planet, right? That today, as a matter of fact, they get in a little bit of an oxygen tank because of this administration, who actually decided now that they're gonna buy some oil from your country. Can you take a minute and see if you can hopefully connect it for the benefit of everybody watching us to what's taking place with former President Donald Trump?
Yeah, so look, it all started, I started paying attention to this, and I already said it in previous episodes. I started paying attention to politics a little more on a side where I'm like, okay, going from I know that I'm right to how do I know that I'm right? And that's when I actually realized that I have a lot more conservative leanings than I thought. And or than Telemundo, Univision, CNN actually led me to believe. And it was a simple question that my wife, Nori, asked my mom and my dad. She says, hey, I see you are uneasy. And it was in the past, it was one of the elections. And she says, I see you uneasy. What are some of the things that you're concerned about? Or what are some of the things that you realized that took Venezuela from the fourth largest economy? I'm talking about people were making money, hand over fist, fist over hand, whatever it is. And it was just doing amazing. And she said 4 things. One, the number one thing that they did is they took the guns away. So right now the country, like the citizens of the country, are unable to defend themselves against the government. In the government, whenever there's demonstrations, people are going with pots and pans and and the government, the military has literally tear gas, guns, and a bunch of different things that are going thrown at them, and it's just not, so how do you defend yourself against a tyrannical government? So that was one that we not only saw it happened, meaning no guns. Now we've seen the consequences, and these dudes been in power for how long? Yeah. And even Chavez, before then. So makes sense, right? The second thing is they wanted to pack the court, which is if you pack the court, you have the opportunity to change the Constitution. Yeah. So they changed the Constitution in such a way that we had elections just like, and we technically still do, but this whole thing of passing the baton, right, that is supposed to happen, is no longer happening in our country. You can research it. Back in 2000 was when Chavez was elected or took office, and how long has it been? 23 years now?
Correct.
That this guy has been around. 1999 is belief that he won. So that was the second one. The third one, what is it? Guns back in the court. Whew. I'm drawing a blank, but I'll come back to it. So that happened, and you can see a country literally deteriorating. People are now concerned about food. There's food shortages. There's a bunch of different things. So for me, and it was directly related to the level of corruption. I remember elections, it will take weeks for us to realize who was the president, to find out that it was the same guy. You know what I mean? Why? Because you have the opportunity to mess around with the votes and stuff like that. And so, I'm not saying that that's what's happening. I don't want to go that route. But it happened in my country, so we're not even that far off, especially with people, this Gavin Newsom guy, 28th Amendment, he's throwing in there, he's saying, let me go ahead and whatever do with guns. It's not the time to talk about that, but this is happening right now in this country. So when I look at this, and I look at what is happening to an ex-president, forget about the name of the guy, this is happening to an ex-president, and I would be totally fine if it was happening and people were going after him in the same way that they're going after every single other person. But the reality is that there is an entire establishment going after one guy because he decided to rattle the things. And we were talking about it in the car earlier today, is the fact that Trump did a great job at unmasking a lot of the people that are behind these things, where right now they're being unapologetically out of the closet. So stuff that was happening in the back of the scenes and stuff like that, right now we're seeing people go at it so in front of everybody else's eyes, and we're being distracted with Biden announces $2.1 billion additional security to Ukraine. So we're chasing Ukraine, we're busy looking at other stuff, and our current freedoms are being under attack.
Gonna keep you distracted. You know what I mean? Pay attention to Bud Light, pay attention to Target, pay attention to
Pride Month.
to pay attention to the Dodgers and LA inviting this group of clowns to perform. Let them, just keeping you distracted with all these other things. How about we put enough on the table so that you're not paying attention to how our Constitution is being shredded right now?
For me, one thing you were saying how you think that we passed the line. I don't think there is a line, unfortunately. It can get worse. Like, we've seen a president get killed.
It's always room.
So there's no limit to how far it can go. Just because we've already seen it past this point, So I think it's a weird space that we're in right now. But to go into what's actually going on, like I remember saying this before, unless I'm misunderstood about what's actually happening as far as what the indictment is about, So if a president or a former president is not allowed to have documents, I don't know who's allowed to have the documents. To me, that should be they should automatically get a green light on all documents. So it makes no sense to me how, I just don't, it doesn't add up. So I'm trying to figure out who is the group of people who's allowed to have these documents if it's not a president or a former president, because it makes no sense.
So in more fairness, I also want to go back to the idea that I am saying to you that the reputation of Attorney Jay Bratt is different than what happened in New York, right? What happened in New York is everybody at the end, I said, listen, that indictment was totally a joke. You know what I mean? Is ran on. Here's somebody that ran on. I'm going to do that, and it was almost to keep a promise more than any. There was really no meat on the bone. There was we're just gonna go after him. Let's see what happens. Then everybody read the indictment, right? And they go like, okay, this is a joke. This should have never happened, and just everybody. And then you have this situation. By the way, this is not the end of it. There's a potential additional indictment that will coming down. You remember what happened also in the state of Georgia, trying to certify or to avoid for the votes to be certified, and so they called that also election interference, and so on and so forth, right? What's the difference on this one? That in reality, though, one of the biggest challenges.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They call that election interference.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. His participation, his activity. So.
Right.
Yeah,
What is this?
I'm not saying that it was, but.
No, that's the name. It's just funny.
That's
it's
the
like,
legitimate.
Rules for me, but not for me.
That's the legitimate name of something that eventually, when you go to court, You don't want to hear statements like that. You don't
Right.
want to hear. You want to hear something like, he was drunk and crashed against the building. You can get off out of that one. But election interference, conspiracy,
Conspiracy.
all of those things are, those are favorite things that are used when it comes to a situation like this. But in all fairness, also here's a problem. Somebody whose personality was one of the main reasons for the people even the people that wanted to support him at some point were either hesitant or stopped supporting him just because there was an incredible lack of discipline all throughout his presidency when it came to how to communicate and how to go about dealing with certain people. You know what I mean? That and so apparently, and part of what the indictment is describing is there are a few instances where statements were actually recorded on either interviews or conversations where he was literally saying, this is a classified document that I was no longer able to declassify. I wish I can classify. You know how Trump would go on and on about, well, it was, I wish I can classify it right now. It's a little too late, so don't get too close to it. So the problem is not, let's assume that you kept enough distance from that person not to see it, but in fact you are meaning to have something that you're not supposed to have. Right? Now, the question then later on becomes compared to what? Right? Because if we're going to talk about the rule of law, right, and what everybody that is on the left, every pundit that will argue from that side, that will be the never Trump no matter what type of group of people, right? They're saying, well, it doesn't matter if you're the president or you're former president. It doesn't matter who you are. You shouldn't be above the law. No, at any given point, we got to remember, everybody, that the rule of law has to be. And I'm okay with all of that as long as.
So what happened to the garage?
As long as we apply that
Across
evenly.
the line.
What
Across the
happened
board.
with Joe Biden? Why exactly?
Even Mike Pence.
The current FBI director was literally about to be accused of being in contempt of Congress for not submitting a document that literally proved that there was some kind of illegal activity taking place with the Biden family that is essentially going all the way up to the president. And if there was a legitimate reason to move quickly with an indictment, you could have started there, right? I remember James Comey, also again former director of FBI, when it came to the whole situation with Hillary Clinton, saying no reasonable prosecutor will go after a situation like this, and it's almost like announcing, guys, listen, just leave it alone.
Yeah,
let's
move on.
Let's move on, right? Kind of say, hey, you did, but nobody will get. This is like this. This is the absolute example of somebody that, again, is overstepping, and what everybody's saying, election interferes. And the question is, do they really fear this man that much? That they got to do all of this just to try to stop him? Do they really fear that many changes that will potentially come down the road quickly, if he actually gets elected again, that they got to go through every single one of those things just to try to stop it? And my question to most of these people, do you actually believe that if a Republican, even let's assume that they give him the maximum amount of time, and I'm going to tell you exactly what that could potentially look like, right? And he gets locked up. And in addition to having an orange-looking face, he's going to have an orange suit.
He's going to match.
I mean, it's just like there are some people that cannot wait. They already created that picture, right?
Yeah.
That where they locked up. Let's assume that people are heartless enough where they couldn't care less if we're stepping over the Constitution, if we're stepping over the law, and they want to do that to this man, who again is a former, to your point, former president of the country, right? Do they absolutely forget that if another Republican gets elected, whether it's DeSantis or anybody else, there are many people that will be running, or your very good friend Vivek, that is a realistic possibility. That would be the end of his issues. That would be the end of his problems.
But doesn't that now bring up the situation where now a group, maybe not a person, but a group can be above the law? So at the end of the day, if my cousin couldn't become president. It don't matter what I do, because
but then we have to address the whole issue about pardons. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
true,
in
true.
reality,
Yeah.
whether you got busted buying some cocaine or somebody's accusing
Yeah.
you of blowing up a little building, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then at some point, somebody decided to say, enough time, maybe it was not enough clear evidence. And, one of the privilege that a president has is to pardon another. And the thing is that every single one of the president has exercised that level. So by default, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
We already created an environment where essentially we decided, you know what, I decide that it's enough.
Yeah.
So that essentially is placing another person above the law,
Yeah.
and you behaving in a way that is more
Gotcha.
something that an emperor will
Yeah.
do. You know what I mean?
I don't mind it, honestly.
So I just, for the people that are going like they can't, for the people that hate Trump, right?
Yeah.
That are walking around with a smile, that they like, yeah, it's like Cinco de Mayo for these guys right now. You know what I mean? Having a big celebration. I don't want to ruin your party,
Yeah.
but I just want to remind you that the option of another person to come in and pardon this man is very much on the table. So
So can I throw a monkey wrench in there?
absolutely, please do.
Because what is the probability, understanding what is happening right now and the things that are being played out and what happened with COVID and something else coming up miraculously March of 2024, and we end up with the same party in power again. If you were to be a betting man, what are the odds of that happening again?
To end up with another Democrat,
Biden again.
a Biden again, or even just a Democrat in general.
Well, I mean, Kennedy, I don't know. Kennedy running as a Democrat. I don't know that he'll be that guy.
As of this moment,
Maybe, I don't know.
You know,
We'll see.
and again, listen, the problem with the polls out there right now is that the polls have been so wrong so many times.
Yeah.
In the last few elections, right? It's very difficult to rely on that.
That's true.
In addition to the fact that, I mean, let's face it, honestly, realistically speaking, I went to sleep at 3:30 in the morning, and as of that moment, it appeared that the person who was going to be the next, our current president, was Donald Trump. I
Yep.
woke up at 5:45, 6 o'clock in the morning, and
They waited for the East Coast to fall asleep.
just to find out, that we were going to have a new president-elect.
Yeah.
And so we are going through weird times for so many reasons, but the numbers at this very moment, though, what they show is that the overwhelming population is saying, first of all, we don't want another 4 years. This is already 64 to 65% of the country saying we don't want. Even hardcore Democrats right now are saying, I don't think he should run. These are just like you can see now going from absolutely we're gonna support him no matter what to shifting a little bit. Out of these news organizations openly voicing that perspective. In addition to that, the second choice, as of this moment, is a member of the Kennedy family who has labeled some very significant accusations against people like Fauci, against institutions
CIA.
like CIA, FBI, in many cases as being responsible for the death of, multiple family members. So this is not a guy who's being viewed as a friendly. That's what I'm saying. For me, the people that are potentially going to be running for the primary of the Democrat side, still not in yet. There's still questions about Newsom. There's still questions about a couple of the people that may jump in. So it would be too early to say. But as of this moment, if I was betting, if you're saying this is the moment where based on the information that we have, there is absolutely no way they get to the presidency again. As of this moment, we still got plenty of time to change. And the other side of the aisle, right, from the Republican side, from Donald Trump as the leading candidate right now, right, who just went through his indictment. And then you have Ron DeSantis, right, who's the second person, and then is everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. Listen, the more that I listen to the positions of Vivek Ramaswamy,
He just needs a bigger mic.
he needs a bigger mic.
He needs more people.
He needs a little more empathy when communicating with people. He's got to stop being so factual about things, you know what I mean? People, numbers, we operate on a sales environment, and we know very well that facts don't sell, right? And so this man is trying to sell a vision, but he's going so factual about it that he's not able to look. He needs to look at somebody and say, I understand your concern. I understand your fears.
The whole State of the Union when he said, your kids are not luggage. Oh, man.
You know,
that was epic.
So my problem is that, you know, but even with that though, you know what I mean? You have a bench right now from the other side that if one guy was removed, you still have people that can actually come
100%.
in and make enough of an argument to say, you don't want another 4 years, which you just got right now. Because at the end of the day, here's the good news. It's not just the personality of the individual, but in addition to that, it's very difficult to hide some of the numbers. They're not pretty. It doesn't look well.
Yeah.
So, now, let me just give you some information about the actual indictment, right? Right now, the way this looks is if everything went down according to every single one of the indictments, and he actually ended up doing time as per every single one of the counts. So count from 1 to 31 will automatically add the first 10 years. Supervised after being released for 3 years, meaning parole for 3 years. Mandatory time if applicable, meaning if he gets the 10 years, he's got to do the 10 years, right? With a $250,000 fine, right? And then every single additional count has different time to be served. So count 32, 20 years. Count 33, 20 years. Count 34, 20 years. Count 35, 20 years. I'm at 90 already, guys.
Yeah.
Right? 36 and 37 is 5 years each. I'm at 100 years. I'm at 100 years right now. If somebody looks at this whole thing seriously enough, right? And I understand that they're going to put a lot of stuff in there so that hopefully something can actually stick to it. But if somebody's looking at this right now and they're not saying, this is absolutely unbelievable and absurd, and it's definitely not right though. It just doesn't look fair. It just doesn't, you know, it just got already a step beyond anything that can be reasonable. You know that the first time that I heard about the indictment, they were saying there was potentially 7 counts. And I said, wow, 7 counts is already a problem, you know what I mean? Because all they need is one of those 2 things to really, really stick, then that's a problem. 37?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's the definition of we have not something strong enough, let us throw a bunch of shit against the wall, see what will stick.
Well, that's what led me to put that question on the table. How much do they fear this man that they got to do something like this? And then, guys, here's my question for you guys. Are we already beyond a point of past a point of no return when it comes to the level of corruption that where we are as a country right now? Our institutions have become so corrupted that something like this can potentially be happening. And to the argument that you want to apply the rule of law to everybody, former, existent, and nobody's above the law. And then for everybody else to know everything that's taking place with Joe Biden, everything that took place with former First Lady Hillary Clinton, and to believe that you have to buy the idea that this is based on applying the rule of law to everyone and not to do this is the most insulting thing that they can be telling right now to the average American. And here's what I believe. They just managed to, essentially, if they don't get to lock him up before the time of the election comes, I think that things like this are the set of things that even the people that are running against him right now are just, if not necessarily, if not
They're
necessarily,
like, oh, what the hell?
it's like it looked like the Republican Party was just gonna get fragmented just based on the amount of people running,
just united,
and they just found a way to get this guy saying, hey, listen, you know, I'm fighting against the guy, but this is not right. This is not something that's supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
So
a couple of things I was thinking. Number one, I don't know the legal term for it, but there's a lot of times when there's different cases like that, they'll serve all of their times like together. So then whatever the longest one would be, that will be the most time they'll serve. So in this,
Consecutively.
so in this situation, it'll be 20 years. But still, at 77, 20 years, you talk about the rest of his life at that point.
Yeah.
Me personally, though, I really don't think he's going to go to jail. I don't think he's going to go to jail. I think this is meant to cause enough problems for him to stop him from winning.
Just so you know, the kind of charges that are there, based on the fact that this is a federal case, 97%, if I want to use statistics, 97% of the time,
some type of time.
somebody with those charges
But
will end up. I'm not saying this, that other 3% of them.
Correct.
But those guys.
I think. If he does, I'll be surprised. And when I say he does, I mean he goes for anything longer than like a couple months, where they just like, okay, this is a slap on the wrist. But like I said, I believe I don't think they're going to try to get him to go to jail for the rest of his life, but I think they are trying to stop him from winning. That I believe they can accomplish. Because even if he goes to jail for a couple months and that disrupts long enough for him to, no longer be able to be in the position of winning the presidency. So I think that's their goal ultimately, and that's a huge possibility that they can accomplish that, but as far as corruption, 100%. And I don't even think this is a new thing that there's been a level of corruption.
You're right.
But it's getting worse, unfortunately. That's the big problem. Is that it's almost like I watch a lot of movies like Godfather or Casino or like that, right? So they expect there to be a little bit of corruption no matter what, but then it can get out of hand. As far as if somebody is
It'll be managed.
Correct, and I think that's the problem with what's going
chaos,
on. Yes, and I think it's getting too far. You can't expect it to be 100% perfect. As far as no one's gonna cheat on any test ever. I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but still, it can't be where the teachers now cheating on the test. That is the person who you were looking to lead the group is now doing the same things that the students are doing. So I think, yes, it's corrupted as far as, or there's a level of corruption in the government. I think it's getting worse. And then so we're seeing things like this happen more often. And they may succeed in getting their thing, to put him in jail. But like I said, I don't see him doing 20
I mean, they're
years
moving
or
quickly,
nothing like
though.
that.
They're moving quickly, and obviously they're moving quickly because there's an election
Correct.
coming around, and they're trying to do it on Monday, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. He's supposed to be already in Miami, and again, he's got to go through the system. No different than what happened in New York. It should be less of a circus because is federal. You know what I mean? So those entities are run differently. And it's also, I'm glad, even though it's Miami, I'm absolutely glad it's happening here because I think that the overall opinion from most people from the state of Florida is absolutely positive or supportive. And if anything, at this point, it's going to be even elevated to a level of sympathy, or they're going to be sympathizing. They have some empathy for this man. Like the one thing that Democrats never wanted to see happening is the country getting to a point where they actually feel sorry for Donald Trump, right? I think they're getting to the point where they're going to manage to do that. But I'm going to tell you, the mental toughness, dog. I mean, this guy has been around. You've seen a lot of financial challenges, a lot of difficult moments. Economy's going well, very public life, many interviews, difficult situations. The mental toughness that you gotta have to go through something like this and come out of it at the end and still saying, I'm gonna keep going until you guys either, I don't know, but what are they gonna shoot him at this point?
No, but I will say this. If he does go to jail for like a long time, it's gonna lead to the worst position the country's ever been in ever, because you're gonna see a lot of other people who's gonna get indicted, a lot of other people who's gonna go to jail.
Do you really think so?
100%.
What do you mean?
Yes, 100. Like, because at the end of the day, once
across the board.
Yes,
What
I
do you
think
mean
so.
across the
Yes,
board?
because once something is done, right, and now I can use this as a reference point to now say, oh, because this happened, this is something that now is what the court says.
So what do you think is happening? Why do you think right now with, let's talk about just boxes and documents, because that's what we have right now. That's the topic currently.
Yes.
How many other people have been found with boxes and documents?
Correct.
And they haven't been prosecuted to this level?
No, but what I'm saying is, I think if once it happens once, it's gonna cause a chain reaction to where now all of them is gonna. That's what I'm saying. It hasn't happened yet. I don't think it's gonna happen. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Correct.
I don't think it. But if it does, it's gonna cause a big problem across the board for the country on a bigger level.
Here's where I'm expecting.
It's a partisan issue. It became a partisan issue. It's not a rule of law issue. It became a partisan issue.
No, but in order to correct it, here's the thing though. Is in order to correct it is so the language that most
I'm hoping that will be the case.
So for example, the language of most of the Republican candidates right now is like, we are also going in there. Like at this point, there is not one person that they need to be concerned about. What they ended up doing is that they opened the door to every single one of these candidates now to make a pledge. They actually put them in that position. And now they're going to say, we're going to go in there and we are going to clean this up. What's taking place here is not right? So how do you do that? Well, you're going to have no choice but to go after some of the main players that created this situation. And yes, I agree with you that a lot, but what I'm hoping for is that if the cleanup, even though it may require to go after some of these bad characters, goes through that process of going after the bad characters, I hope that at the end of the day, the end result is a cleanup. You know what I mean? That is a real type of situation that will take place. But there will have to be a little bit of that to take it, because you can't clean up unless you go after, again, we keep talking about Nayibbukele, right? We're talking about what happened. This guy right now ended up taking, I wish I would have the breakdown of that many properties, that many bank accounts, that many things that, luxury this, luxury that, this many cars, that, from the previous people that were running the country. Because in order to make a correction, you have no choice but to go after the bad characters. Now, is there's somebody that's going to come into power later on and say, what can we do to Nayib Bukele? Right? So, but for me in this case, listen, even if they're given 100 years, I will tell you, at some point there will be a Republican president, and that president is going to pardon Donald Trump. And in the heart of hearts, it tells me that would be the right thing to do. Because is either that, or they're gonna have to go and apply the rule of law to everybody, and and it's very clear that they're not willing to do that right now.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they're willing to do it.
I think that Joe Biden is gonna come out of it without a single indictment. I think that he's gonna somewhere the way it looks, you know, I mean, if the way there are withholding documents, FBI itself not want to provide certain documents to Congress. The fact that there is that level of protection for one man and a level of exposure and harassment to the other one, it's just an unbelievable thing to witness. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying to everybody. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't care where you stand. You know what I mean? You can't watch something like this take place and not come to the conclusion to saying, you know what, this is not healthy for the country. This is not healthy for any other place. Guys, we're going to have plenty of development. Well, I'm dying to see how this whole thing is going to work. I think that they are going to try to make it go as fast as possible, precisely because the election is coming around.
Yeah.
And but we definitely got to see how this whole thing develops.
Yeah.
Definitely, again, we spoke about many moments where we're saying not a good day for the country. Definitely not a good day for the country. Not a good moment for it. I mean, I wish something like this, because again, it just brings me back to that level of corruption that takes down governments, economies, anything, or the foundation.
In my country, the current thing that is happening right now, which is rules for thee but not for me, to the people that are not for me, we call them enchufados. And enchufados means that they're plugged in to whatever that system is, and they're untouchable. They're untouchable. They're wealthy, and like we are talking about narco
Yeah.
is a smaller like organization compared to whatever's happening in my country, and it's because of that. Like, it's like whatever the shit you have in the movies is tiny compared to what's happening in the country, and it's because of enchufados. So it's like when you're saying that, I understand what you're saying, and I'm hoping that that's going to be the case because it opens the doors and it set a precedent.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the way that this whole system is behaving is very enchufado-like. And to this day, it's been 23 years, and not a single enchufado has paid a price for whatever has been happening to our country, to the citizens, to the people that were middle class that are living in utter poverty right now. So that's
I'm hoping we're not at that level.
Well, we gotta.
Yeah, but even when it feels that it is, though, you know what I mean? The lesson from El Salvador, by the way, everybody should be doing a case study from nayibbukele. Everybody should be doing a
should
case
do the next
study.
podcast.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
we should be doing a case study about El
24.
Salvador. We should be doing the fact of the matter is that you have a country that, for all intended purposes, everybody would have said is too far gone. It's just that the corruption and the gangs and all this. For everybody, there was absolutely no hope. You have no idea how many people right now are traveling from Europe, United States, different Asia, just to go vacation in El Salvador right now, just because it has become such a safe place. And from a business perspective, I told you my family was considering to do something out of one of the neighboring countries, which is where I was born, and now it's saying maybe we should go do it over there. Like, we're looking into that right now. You know what I mean? Just to
really like that,
just to say, and so can you still rescue a situation even if you feel like absolutely? But it's going to take somebody at that level with that level of clarity and intensity. And we might have a couple of guys that feel like they can potentially be there, but are they going to be swallowed by
The
the system? You know what I mean? I who knows? You know what I mean? Because
Interesting
anyway,
times.
guys, any final takes on this thing at this point? But just gonna wait until see how it develops.
Still early. Yeah.
Appreciate it for everybody that is watching up until this moment. You know, I just want to let you know that regardless of what your position is, I wanna just literally respectfully ask you from that perspective. You know, that as a citizen of the country, and for everybody that's looking for what would be best for the country, regardless of your position, I want to remind you of three very simple things. One of them is the fact that what's actually taking place here hopefully will not be something that is going to be used against every political opponent when somebody just gets to the point where they don't know how to stop somebody, you know. So hopefully it's not going to become something that is just going to keep bouncing back and forth, and a blueprint for future people, elections, and things like that. Second, regardless of your position, you know, I mean, I hope that you will have a moment of honesty about the whole situation and say, you know what, this is really, really not a good thing taking place for the country, and it really feels beyond anything that can be connected to rule of law. And finally, if you are deeply one of those believers that said that, you know what, rule of law, no matter what, then you should be demanding that the same set of rules and laws should be applied to some of the other people that, you know, apparently are doing worse things and nothing is being done to them. So that makes us, we're not looking well in when it comes to the eyes of the international community. But to be quite honest with you, we're not looking well in the actual eyes of the people who care and love this country. You know what I mean? And hopefully that's all of us. But with that being said, we're going to keep an eye on how this whole thing develops. We'll keep you informed. If there's anything here that makes any sense in terms of conversation and how we processing issues, again, you know, subscribe, pass the video around and see if anybody has any feedback to give us. And obviously, more than anything else, comment. Let us know. Listen, I agree, I don't agree. We have a lot of people. We thank you for the people that are actually commenting on Instagram. And but right here, we would like to see in this channel some additional feedback from people. Again, whether you agree or disagree with some of the things that we're saying, we are very respectful about your position. You have the right to have it. That's the beauty of our country. But we're going to continue to advance what we believe is the many blessings that this country have to offer every single one of us. So with that being said, thank you for spending some time with us today. Appreciate you.
See you.
Right.